Hi, I'm Jen Taylor. I'm the CEO of Human-Centered Apps, and in this video, I'm going to actually build a project planner app using Framework 4 from HCA in real time. So I just want to show you, this isn't really a tutorial video. We have detailed documentation for our partners and builders, but this is more just to give you a sense of what we use this tool for, why you might use it, and some of the capabilities it has. So, like any good cooking show, I've prepared a little bit in advance. I've got my tools and some things that have been in the oven for a little while. So, I have built some custom objects because I'm assuming if you watch this video, you are probably a Salesforce admin, and building a custom object is well within your comfort level. So, I've built 4 supporting objects for our UI: projects, milestones, which is a child of project, project task, which is a child of milestone, and then project time entries. And I've put some roll-ups and things in there just so we can sort of track, estimated hours and how much time we've spent so far and that sort of thing. So obviously you could use something like this quite happily in Lightning. And it's just a good basis to show you how we can build something that typically we use Framework for something much more complex than this. But it's a great way to just show you really quickly what we can do. So you'll see here I also have prepared a tab that is Project Planner. And in this tab is an empty Visualforce page called Project Planner. The framework produces a single page app, basically. So it's a single Visualforce page that is rendering dynamically all of the individual sort of web page experience that you might have. We call each individual sort of grouping of fields a panel, just to distinguish it from a web page. And so let's get started building. When I start building a framework app, I usually open up a few tabs all at once. Now, in this demo, I have actually done a little bit of pre-thinking on the design that I want. Of course, as an application builder, you will have done that too. You know sort of what the content of the screens is. You know how you want them to link together and the sequence that you want. In this case, I'm actually going to do something rather simple. I'm just going to build tasks this week as our starting point. And I'm going to link some elements off of that so you can start to get a sense of how an app might come together. So to get started, the first thing I do is I go to Setup and Visualforce Pages and launch our Quick Start Builder. This isn't a full admin. We still do, as of this version of Framework 4, we still do quite a lot of work in custom metadata to do all of the sort of refinement that we're building. But this gets us started really quickly, as you'll see. With Framework, you're basically getting sort of a collection of tools that's designed to hang together to render the application on the screen. So the first thing that you get is the Visualforce template that is actually editable by you. So you can style it however you like and add hooks in there if you like. You also get several custom metadata types. So these are the declarative pieces that combine to make the actions and interactions you see on the screen. They are, just as a quick overview and orientation, panel definition is sort of the container for any one sort of experience of a web page. A panel definition, any panel can have multiple areas, so you coming from multiple objects. So you might have a top area that is showing information about the account. You might have another area that's showing a list of all the projects that account has undertaken, something like that, on the same screen. Menu definition is how we define up to 3 tiers of menuing. So a primary, secondary, and tertiary navigation. Field refine is actually where all of the really granular adjustments happen. How wide is this field? What is its label? Is it actually performing a SQL query that is then being turned into a pick list? So field refine is where I spend as a builder most of my time in just sort of getting all those little nuanced details right. And then app config is very rarely touched. So now what you're seeing is the last component that comes with Framework, aside from the engine that pulls it all together, which is the jumpstart. You can build multiple apps actually, so each page is an app, and so if you had 5 different pages doing different things, you would have 5 different apps on this list. In this case, we only have one, the project planner. And so when I want to add a panel, I click on Add Panel, and I get several options. As you can see, there is a calendar option, there's a view-only grid, edit, etc. So I'm going to start with a view-only grid. I'm going to show tasks this week, and we'll get moving. So once I choose what kind of layout I want, I need to give it a title, of course, and the hash is actually needs to be unique for every panel in your system. This is how we link panels together. This is referred to throughout the build. Context is, think about this as a sort of variable scoping. In a simple app like this, we pretty much only have one context. So I'm operating in the context of the user, and all the variables are being passed in the same container. As we're working on a much more complex app, something with, say, if you're a teacher and you're working with a roster of students, when you log in, you're operating in your context. When you select a student, all of the panels are being driven by that student's context. So that's sort of the container for the variables there. And is it a page? Is it an overlay? Dialogue is a smaller modal. And then there's some controls here that come into play when we're doing sort of modal to modal or other functionality. In this case, I just want it to be full page, and I hit save. The next step is to choose the object. So in this case, I actually want tasks this week. So project task is where I'm going to start. And finally, we get to choose our fields. So from this screen, I've chosen my primary object, and like everything else in Salesforce, it knows about the relationships between the primary object, which is always here at the top, and all of its other objects. So if you have lots of lookups, this is going to be a very long list. You can access any object that is accessible via a lookup or master detail relationship on your primary. So in this case, I'm actually going to, I want to choose a field from the project because I want to show the project name on this list. And I want to store the record ID of this project for use later. So once I click on something that's part of that project, I want the system to know about it so that I can work with that project. I also want to show the milestones. So I just want to show the name here. And then finally, the task. I want the task name, certainly. I want its ID. Start date and end time, status. Just trying to think of the things that would be handy on a quick reference sort of triage list. I think that's good enough for now. We can always come back and add more later. So once I've sort of chosen the fields that I want, then I get to do some sort of preliminary formatting of them. These, since I've chosen a view-only grid, that's going to generate a grid model, right? So like a spreadsheet, like you're seeing on this screen, actually. And then from sort of top to bottom, on this list is going to render from left to right in the grid. So I need to drag this around so that it shows in the order that I want. So we're going to put project name at the top, milestone name. I usually stick my hidden things at the very bottom of the list. Other people put them at the top. I want my task name, its status, start date, due date, and then the total time spent. Great. The other things you can do on this screen are you can add an action icon, which I want to do. I actually want 2 of them. An action icon is a little just icon like this guy here that can take you to something, perform some action when it's clicked. An action button is also when it's clicked, perform some action that you specify and renders as a button instead of an icon. A spacer will allows you to more control the page layout if you're doing a non-grid layout. So now that I've got them in the order that I want, the final thing is to refine all of these. Mostly we're going to do some label changes. We don't need to repeat all these words. The display order is just the sequential, what we did on the prior screen, drag and drop. Display class, this layout, a grid, all of our grid layouts, actually all of our page layouts are on a 10 grid. So if you sort of break up this, this central component into 10 even boxes, what the display class lets us do is control how much of one of those boxes each field takes up. So for example, the project name might be a bit longer. We might want it to span 1.5 of these boxes, whereas the status is small, so 1 should do. And our icons are tiny, so we usually set those to 0.3. The default for a grid is 1.5, so I'm just not going to bother setting all these other ones. We should leave them pretty much as they are. Context set, so this is how the panels pass variable information to each other. So if I am going to store the project record ID, then I need to set it in context. So I'm going to say project ID. It is JavaScript. It is case sensitive. And this is going to be task ID. And now I have access to these variables, the value in these variables in subsequent pages. I'm also going to hide these. Finally, we have a number of templates to override sort of the default Salesforce field behavior. Some of them are just formatting templates. So, the pick a day, the calendar, if it's a date, an mail to, so it sort of converts an email address into a little mail to icon. Obviously, we're about to look at action icons. If you have multi-pick, you can turn it into checkboxes. You can create a static pick list. You can create a pick list out of SOQL ID. So you would be prompted to create a query that gathers records and then creates a pick list. We also have, it's not in the quick build on this version. It's coming out in the next version. A predictive typing pick list, or a predictive typing like a combo box. So if I want to search through all of the accounts, well, I've got thousands. I don't want that in a pick list. That's a terrible user experience. Instead, I want to start typing my account name and have it be filtering as I type. That's also available. So in this case, I'm not going to override anything. And then finally, if you do have a template chosen, the config guides you to what you want to fill in. So if it were, a SOQL to pick, then this would be prompting me for my query. In this case, we have some action icons, and so it just wants to know, well, what picture should I show and where should I take them? The action icon options are up here in the gear. We provide, by default, a free set of icons that come with IcoMoon. You are absolutely welcome to choose your own icons and upload them and work them into your set. So the first thing I want to do is provide an icon that takes you to details of the project. And I have found that choosing the icon is often the hardest part. So I'm just going to pick one at random here. And this is going to represent our project. The action text is what you want it to say when you hover. So that would be view project. action style and style field. So if I wanted this to be, so by default, it's just going to show up in black. If I wanted it to be dark blue or green or something like that, I could put styling in here. I can also set up a Salesforce formula field to have it dynamically control the styling, which is more useful. A lot of times we use these icons as indicators. So if you are needing to indicate that someone is 10 days late on a particular project status and have them click on that status to, do something about that, you would set up a formula field that says, if due date today minus due date greater than or equal to 10, display red, otherwise, maybe yellow and green. That controls the styling. I don't have either of those for this demo. I'm just going to talk about them. Panel is what do we want to do? So in this case, I want it to be project details. And panel field is the same is a similar concept as action style field, where I can actually control where it goes via a Salesforce formula field. So if I want the click action to direct me to one panel in one circumstance and a different panel in a different circumstance, I set that up in a formula field, I reference it here, and the interaction takes place. And finally, let's do the task icon. So I want to go to the details of this task. All right. So when I hit save, everything is in my custom metadata is being created for me. So when I go here now and manage records, I have got tasks this week, which I just built. I can go to my panel area and manage panel areas, and I have tasks this week. So I have got all of my structure in place, and I'll just show you under the hood real quick what those field refines look like. So all of that work that I just did comes into custom metadata here. And if I've made a mistake or if I want to add something, then I can clone this record, make the adjustments as needed. So we'll get into that in a bit. Let's take a look at what it looks like. So here we go. We have tasks this week. It shows up in the menu. There is a header that displays. Because I had said this was a grid, it comes with a filterable list. So if I want anything that's in discovery, this automatically filters across all elements. We can see that I've got my icons. I can see that this one is blue and this one is not styled. And this wraps, so I violated my 10 grid a little bit, and I think I'm gonna just maybe adjust my milestone width to, or maybe total time spent, maybe drop that down to 1 instead of 1.5. So to do that, I go to my custom metadata, hit manage fields, and total time spent, I would edit that. Oh, I already have that on 1. Let's maybe drop that even further to say 0.7. There we go. So it kind of squashes the header. And as with all web building, there's more time spent in tweaking the visuals than there is in actually building the code. So here we go. Here's our first list. It was that simple. It actually goes a lot faster when I'm not running my mouth. And this is our starting point. So the next thing I'm going to do is build 2 more panels to go to the view project and task details. But first I'm going to take a little detour and show you that you can style this however you like. So we don't lock the page. We assume you are building to suit your needs. And the page is really simple. This is, I mean, it's only, 100 rows. There are places where you can do things like pull in a record ID into context automatically. You would have to build a controller for that. So if you know Apex, you can do continue to extend this. You can also add your own JavaScript extensions. There's a library of hooks. At any rate, what I want to do is come in here and I'm going to change this and include a component that I built with some styling. Okay, and so I've overridden some of the style, and this should work. Oops, I whacked something I shouldn't have whacked. So the good news is, since we provide you with a template, you can always go back and find what you shouldn't have done. In this case, I removed a style that is required. Sorry about that, but hey, it's a real-time demo. That should be better. And so now we have a completely different style. Say what you want about the styling. I just wanted to demonstrate that we absolutely can just drop in a style sheet and move on. So now let's build out a couple more panels. Let's start with viewing the project. So I usually make note. I usually actually have a diagram with each of the panels that I intend to build. In this case, I'm just going to refer to what I called it here, so project details, and then it's just go back to your apps list and build some panels. So in this case, I want this to be a record edit, just to demonstrate that. We're going to stay in the same context. It's going to be a page project. There we go. That's better. Choose the fields, and I want client, and I want project name, and I'm just going to show some stuff here. These are okay. Save all selected fields. Project name first. So I'm going to add a spacer between project name and client, or sorry, between client and total number of tasks. You can also add a section. Well, let's see, let's add 2 sections to lay this out. So on a grid, you can't add a section, but on a regular layout, you can. And I think that'll do it. So from section level 1, don't actually need this, I'll get rid of it. So we have a page that needs some love before anything can be done with it. You will, because we only have one project, When I click on View Project, it will take me to Project Details in the menu, and it will only show me one record. If I were to go back here and add another project, you'll see why we need to do a little bit of refinement. Without editing a query, it's just going to bring in all the records. So let's go tidy this up. First of all, we don't ever really want this to show up unless you have invoked it from this button. So we're going to go into custom metadata, and the first thing we're going to do is take it off of the menu because we don't want it there. So I'm going to delete that. All right, and now I am going to go into the panel area, which is where the query is defined. And I can say where ID So we have some markup that lets us connect, basically plug variables in to what we're doing. So you might remember that when we were setting up this screen, we told it to store the hidden variable of the project ID into the context field project ID. So when I want to ask for it to dynamically sort of know which project I'm working on, I then take the variable from whichever one I've clicked on here and plug it in this way. Hit save. And before I refresh, I'm actually going to go and double check that that is what I asked it to call this variable. Yes. So again, capitalization is really important here. Now I'm just going to go add a couple of milestones and tasks to this real quick, just so we can make sure that we're testing it all out. All right, so now we have two different projects. We've cleaned up our menu. When I click on this, I expect to be taken just to the Implement Custom UI. When I click on this, I am taken just to make FW4. So on this screen, because I said that it was editable, it is picking up what your actual field definitions are. These are roll-up fields, so even though this is an editable screen, these are not editable fields. This also enforces user-level security, so if these were editable fields, but as a sysadmin, I'm the only one who can edit them, then on Framework, I'm the only one who can edit them. Everyone else will see them as read-only. So right now, this is the only field I can edit. All edit fields, or edit screens, sorry, come with a way to just sort of collapse this down to take up less space, but by default, they're editable. So what about this? This is pretty ugly. We probably want to fix that. This is where I want to do my my look ahead. So I don't want to do a SOCL to pick because in theory I would have thousands of accounts here. It would make a really ugly pick list. So instead, I'm going to go back into my custom metadata types. I go into field refine. I'm going to find, and get rid of this spacer because we don't need it. I am going to find my client record here. and I'm going to choose autocomplete SOQL to value. And then there are some configuration pieces that, that I need to refer to the documentation on. So I'm going to hit pause and go pull up that documentation real quick. So here's a sneak preview of our extensive technical documentation. There's a lot to learn here, as you might imagine. And so we have detailed how-tos on just about everything. In this case, I've got my autocomplete SOQL ID to value, custom config details. I have key value pairs, so I can set, first of all, what is the name? So what is the name field? In this case, it's going to be client. This is just my account. Then I want characters required. By default, it's 3. So this is how many characters do you have to type before the query is run. If you want to allow the addition of a new account from this lookup, just like sort of Lightning allows you to do, there are 2 more fields. We're not going to do that right now. And then we're going to, down here, from account, we're going to hit save. And then we also need to add a field that's a hidden field on our project details. So I'm just going to clone a field here. And with any luck, that's going to turn it into a searchable client list. So let's go take a look. Here we go. So it knows that this was for humans doing great things. But if we want it, oops. I know what I did wrong. I just pasted in an and. Don't need that. We don't have any other conditions. Probably want to order by name. There we go. That should fix it. Let's try that one more time. And so as we type, it would let us switch it away from humans doing great things to human-centered apps. We hit save, and we're all done. So that is adding an edit screen and making it editable. And then let's do one more thing. Let's do a modal for the task details and make it editable. So I'm going to go back to my apps list, add a panel. This is also going to be edit record. This is going to be view task. And I want to make sure I know what I called that. This is going to be, like I said, a modal, so we choose overlay. This is also project task. In this case, I only want fields from project task, so I'm going to bring in everything. And again, we can add some sections. And again, I don't want this showing up in the menu. I only want it invoked from my icon. I am going to do the same thing with task details that I did with project details. So I want to restrict this to ID equals context task ID. And I want to do similar things with project milestone and or project and milestone as I did with client. So I'm going to just change those. Actually, why don't I go ahead and make this one a SOQL ID to value. That's a little easier. So this is going to be need to open up one more tab here, get into my object manager. I want to find all of the milestones. So I want to select name from milestone where project ID is the same as the project ID that is set in context, which would be the same project ID of this task. And we're going to do the same thing with projects. Except this one we do want to be the autocomplete. So here again, we go over to our documentation. And we do our custom config. And finally, we want to clone this. All right, let's take a look at that. So to recap, what we were just doing is we were creating the modal that should come up when task details is clicked. So this task is first meeting with HDGT. When I click on that, I should see the project name, and I should be able to search for it. The milestones have been made into a pick list. This task name is, of course, editable. Status is, let's say that's in progress. Assigned comes up as a multi-pick, so that's a little bit ugly. We're going to go back and change that into a multi-pick to checkboxes. And all of our other stuff is available. So I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go back into my custom metadata one more time. And I am going to change assigned into multi-pick to check. We also failed to do one thing, which is to tell our panel what happens when we close it. So panel hash after close, this is basically you can either direct it to the next panel in a sequence if you're building sort of a sequential set of things and you say, I want to bring up this modal, and then when they hit save, I want it to go to this next modal. Or you can say, I actually want it to just go back to wherever it was. So let's try one more time. Oops, I clicked the wrong thing. Sorry about that. You can see, though, my status was saved where I changed it to in progress. So let's view our task details for a different task. Create project plan, that's a new task, and here we go. So now we have other people we can assign this to. So I know this video went a bit longer than you're used to in tutorial or intro videos. It is a complex system. It is an incredibly robust system. There are so many things that we do and build with Framework. And we do all kinds of stuff like taking something like this and integrating it into a Lightning page so that it's aware of what record you're on and provides a more, an extended experience where, even down to an editable list view. We call that sort of using it for widgets. Or we do a full, we have full like resident management, case management implementations that our implementation partners have built that take a really, really complex architecture and put it into a more traditional sort of user experience to guide people through the process. So this is just a taste of what Framework 4 can do. We're really proud of it. We're really excited at this product. And I would really encourage you to reach out if you have questions or would like to see a more thorough demo. We are always happy to talk about it. Thanks very much for watching.